Good morning. Just want to do a quick video on some of these settings here since this is relatively new. Just a quick lay of the land here real quick. Obviously, you can see it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't sleep, so when I can't sleep, I come down and do this. So a little lay of the land here. These are some of the indicators that I have on. This is the volume sliver. It doesn't affect anything on here. Here's the SR lines. Um, they don't affect anything in here, nor does VWAP. The reason why I have mine here and nor the high of the day or the low of the day with the little sharp teeth, only because I'm looking into, obviously putting them in here if I want to add them later. I have my reversal bars, which I could turn those off because they're not going to affect anything here. And then I have the status bar, which doesn't affect anything either. I'm just having that on because I might implement that at a later date, but just to show you that it's there. This one here is the spread, and this is important because I do have this one, and that basically means the spread between this one and this one, and I'll go over the settings, but I have it currently set for a minimum of 5. So when it gets down here and gets in the choppy area, you're not going to see any of the zones because it has to have a minimum of 5, and I think my max is spread out at like 50 or something. I'm still working on a better number for that. So that's the line. So let's go through the settings and how this is going to, this is a strategy. And so just close this off, make this a little bigger. Okay, so the version that I'm working right now is 111, December 1st. There are, in essence, 5 groups. Your main chart is group 1. So there's really no point of putting that on there, but it is group 1, whatever that main chart is. And I use the 5-1 or possibly sometimes the 8-1. And then that's what I use for my chart. These are all Ninja Ranko. They're all uniform. Each group, which indicates a higher time frame. And right now I'm currently synced with group 2, which means my main chart, group 1 and group 2, have to be all lined up together in order to be to plot whatever color the background's going to be. And obviously, the more I put on there, if I checked all 4, then all 5 charts would have to be in sync. And then obviously you're going to narrow down a lot more trades. But in this case, I'm working with crude, and I'm just using this group 2 as background, and then we'll go from there. So this one here is the orientation. The orientation means the small moving average has to be above the larger moving average, which you could change in the settings down further. But right now I have this one set as the small one and this one, and with checking that, it's required that they be in order. We needed to slow down NASDAQ, so that for NASDAQ I have to check that just to kind of slow it down a little bit. But in crude I've taken it off. It's not necessary. I like to see it, and actually you don't have to see it. You can not even plot it if you don't want it, but I do like to see it. It's not going to affect anything regarding taking or creating entry zones and taking trades because I have it unchecked. So technically I don't even need to see it, but I like to see it. Then we go into the spread. That's what I talked about briefly here, this white one. You need a minimum of 5 of spreads of these two. And even if you don't see them, it's still going to plot that. So even if you turn them on transparent and don't want to see them, it's still going to look at that unless you change the number to like 1 or 99999. I guess you'll never have this spread to worry about. So right now this spread is something. It's a 5 and 55. I guess I have there. And then audible alerts, these are just when things change, when the higher time frames change. Don't even need to do that right now. I do have my bearish and bullish wave file, so that means when it does switch right here, you'll get the audible that says, bullish moving average is going up. So that's technically not even needed. And then background plots. The background colors are just defaults. Of course, they can be changed. Now the entry zones, here's ones that you're going to use a lot of, this group 5 down here. These are the entry zones. So technically the actual zone, the true zone, is a line, a number, a value right in the middle. And wherever that may be, a positive or a negative. If you can go either direction as far as how far back, if you want to higher offset or a lower offset, you could switch this to positive or negative. And I'm using a I want a six tick pullback. So technically, from the bar where this green starts to plotting, you come in 6 ticks back would take you to right there. However, I have a 4 tick zone, so it's going to give you 2 ticks on either side to make the box. Now, if you wanted a zone bigger, you would just increase that number and have a bigger zone. And then the length of the zone, obviously, is in bar length. Now, I'm still trying to play with that because in the automatic mode, it will automatically take a trade if it's in the zone. However, you don't want to have the zone come all the way out here, which obviously it's no longer valid. So I'm narrowing this down. 15, 20 seems to be appropriate. I'm kind of playing with, and that's where that is. Now the higher time frame, if you're synced to, in my case I was synced to group 2, it would show that one also. And I do have that one set a little longer, only because it's from a higher time frame, so I need more bars of the smaller chart to hang out a little bit longer. But you'll notice in this case I have it turned off because I'm not interested in taking trades from a higher time frame. I'm only looking at this time frame. So I'm not even plotting this higher time frame, so it's not even matter. But I am plotting this one here. That's this local one. And there's the colors of them if you want to change the colors of it. And then opacity, obviously, if you want them deeper or thicker, you can change the opacity. I like to be able to see through them a little bit, so I don't like them at 100%. I like to be able to see the wicks and the bars inside there. So I think 40 is a decent number. Obviously the color. Let me see. So now we have the more background plot. So as I say, the spread is going to be based on these two here, which I have currently set for EMA 1 and EMA 2. However, if you don't want to plot those, just make them transparent. There is no on or off switch for them. Just make them transparent, and they're still going to be there because they're based on the spread, but you just won't see them. More plots. This is the 3-minute. If you want the 3-minute moving average, or you could change it too, right here, going down here. You could do a range or whatever you want. But I was looking at the 3-minute as the default because that's a pretty powerful, for NASDAQ, that's a pretty powerful, moving average. So if you want to incorporate that, you could just click it and it'll turn on. Now, if I did turn it on, it's just going to show on there. It's not going to do anything other than just plot it for me because I did not incorporate above the moving average orientation required. If I do check that and I have the 3-minute checked, then I would need all 3 lined up. I would need the 3-minute, then this one, and then this one, all lined up in a row in order to get along. They have to, smaller above the large. But in this case, they're not even required. So I could turn that on just to plot it if I wanted to, but what's the point? Less is better. Get indicator overload. So alert plots, if you want visuals. Now I do have, let's see if you see it right here. Yes, I have one right here. The only one that I'm plotting is group 2 because that's the one I'm synced with. Now there's a warning that shows a group 2 warning that could show up, but just because it's a warning doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to actually, reverse and switch to the other side. So I don't really need to see that for this case. I'm only looking for true reversals, and you can tell it's a reversal because it stopped painting. It's no longer painting it. It switches to a different color. And when it does, it obviously prints a box. Then moving on further down. So that's all group 6 business. Now group 7, well, group 7 now turns into the A's. So now we go into the trade management portion of it. So all the ones that have row numbers and group numbers are based on the indicator plots, if you will, the entry zones and how they are created. The letters down here are the actual management of how you want to get in, rather manually or automatically. So very important here. Well, let me get out of here real quick. Let me just talk about these. So you notice we have the red, and we have pink, and then we have a transparent, meaning nothing, and then we have green, and then mint. So basically, when it's red or green, that's the position that both charts are going at the same time. when it turns to the mint or to the pink, that just means it's not as strong. It's still red, don't get me wrong, and you can turn that off. I call that the early trend cue. And that's just letting you know that, okay, we just reversed right here. Now we're getting a little weaker, and it could stay weak, for quite a while. Obviously you can see here, this one stayed a lot longer than this one or this one. So they do change back and forth. So if you don't want to see that, then, you just check that. It's not going to change anything because, green is green and red is red. It's just the visual saying, hey, it's just not as strong. So getting back to that, down into the trade management portion. And by the way, I guess I passed that. It's under the background plots in group 5, and that was called early trend Q. So if you don't want to see that, you can just uncheck that, and red is red and green is green. You won't see the pink or the mint. It's just going to be one or the other. So coming back down now to trade management portion of it. Okay, so the entry trigger. The entry trigger is based on the prior bar. It has to be smaller than a prior bar. And it's a reversal. So meaning that the trigger will set up here. I guess I should come back to that. Let me actually turn it on. And I'll show you. But you just have to kind of keep in mind that the entry trigger is, everything is counted from the entry trigger, not your order. Don't get hung up on where you average in at if you have multiple contracts. It's just the entry trigger. That's where the math starts. That's your key. I can't stress that enough. So quantity 1, and then if you want to have an offset. Now you can have a positive or a negative offset. So if you want it ahead of time, so in other words, it triggers, it will set up your order, but if it turns around and goes away from you, it'll just cancel at 15, and it'll never take. If you have a positive offset. If you have a negative offset, and then it goes and trips the entry trigger, and it sets up your order with a negative offset, but then it just keeps going and going and going and going and never pulls back, well, it'll also then cancel at 15. So if it does trip and you have a negative offset, you're waiting for that pullback, otherwise it's going to cancel. And if it does pull back, then you're in. So these are just similar to the ATM strategy of Ninja, which we're kind of all familiar with. And so you have your quantity. I'm only dealing with the quantity one here. So you profit target is 32, again, from the entry trigger. Very important. So it's not from where it's going to be from the entry trigger, which will be 6 ticks. In this case, is 6 ticks from the high or low of the prior bar. So in this case right here, this is the bar that we're counting on. I would need 6 ticks for the entry trigger. You would see a trigger right there, a little green mark if it were going up, or red if it were going down. It would be right there. And if the last price breaches that, you're in. You're tripped, and then your orders will go. If you have 0 on here, just be a market order and you're in. And if you have an offset, well, then the orders will be placed and they'll be waiting for a fill or a cancel. So again, it's important that you have to count from the prior bar. So it's 30. So if the bar is there, now if it disappears, that's because the order got canceled out. If it actually takes the order, it will stay there, and you could see it for historical purposes and calculate and measure from there. So from that entry trigger, which would be right here, 32 bars up would be our profit target, and then the stop is 14, and then now in this case I don't have a quantity 2, but it's 90, and then 14, and there's, I probably should just zero this out. Doesn't matter. It's not going to affect anything because there's no quantity in there anyway. I'm only dealing with 1. So 1 contract and 8 with a positive offset, and when it gets tripped, it'll have a 32 target with a 14 stop. And then to move to break even, these are all optional here. This is just very similar to the ATM strategy in Ninja. So again, if you do have that checked, 28 ticks, again, from the entry trigger, and it will go to a -8. A -8, meaning if the entry trigger is right there, it'll go right here, pretty much under that pivot. If you go to +1, then obviously it's just going to go to your entry trigger +1. Okay, then once you start getting to your, if you have that on, once you start getting to 40 ticks from the entry trigger, it'll start trailing 43. And then at 90 ticks, it'll trail 32. At 122, it'll trail 28. Again, these are more NASDAQ settings. So, still dealing with a lot with NASDAQ. Okay, additional options, the distance here. So for instance, this button here, this is your control area here, if you will. This button here I have set for 0, so it's going to be on the left margin right here. If you usually when I have a smaller chart, I'll put it at 0, but because I have it blown up like that, I might want it over here more, a little closer to, you know, the actual prices. So like 150 takes it to almost the center. So again, depends on the size of your screen, maybe 200, 300. You can play with it wherever you want it, but that's just basically going to move it along the bottom edge there. Right now, I just have it on far left, 0 margin. Okay, so these are pretty self-explanatory as far as your daily. Once you've made, you know, X dollars, it'll stop trading in the automatic mode, and actually it'll stop trailing. So even if you did put a manual one on, it won't take it. So it'll just stop trading. The same thing with down. Now the down has to be negative. So if you have a negative, you have to put a negative in there. So a negative 100, and if you're down $100, it'll stop trading. And keep in mind, unlike the discipline manager, if you disconnect this or turn off the strategy and turn it back on again, it clears it out. So it's not like your account. The discipline manager holds your account regardless of what you got going on. This is just for this strategy while it's on, and it clears itself. The auto consecutive losses. So in other words, if you have that checked on and you have multiple losses in a row consecutive, it'd be consecutive, then it'll just stop trading. And you have to define what a loss is. Now I have defined here as a full stop. So if I have 3 consecutive full stop losses, then stop trading. Of course, I have it unchecked right now, so it's disabled. But if I did check it, it would be 3 consecutive 14-tick losses that I would require from the entry trigger. And if you get one and it goes up some and then it moves to break even, well, that's not a 14-tick loss, so therefore it's going to break your consecutive number, and it'll start the clock all over again. This continuous button right here, this is only for the manual mode. So right now, if I'm in manual mode and I say enter on an up bar, and I'm just waiting for it to go up, so it'll chase me down, and then eventually it'll go up. Once it fills the order, this will stay on. So as soon as you get out, whether meaning if you get your target or your stop, it's already queued up, and it's going to stay long until you manually turn it off. But I have that dechecked by default, so it's just a one and done. So if you click enter on an up bar, and as soon as you get an up bar, it goes and takes it, it will turn off, and now it's over. And if you have to do it again, if you want it again. And you could turn it on while you're in a trade. So for instance, things are setting up, you like what you see, you could turn it on now, and it's just going to be waiting for the next opportunity. And again, if you want to go up, you need to have the down bar. And if you want to go down, you got to have an up bar. So as it's going up, you're like, oh, I like this, I could do an up bar. It's not going to do anything until you get that first down bar. And once you get the down bar, now it's ready to go for an up bar to go further. You don't have to necessarily wait until it comes down into your zone and then turn it on for an up bar. You can just turn it on, and as soon as now the problem with that though is that as soon as it gets you this first down bar, you're going to be triggered and ready to go. So it might turn around instantly and get you in a little too soon. So you might want to wait until you actually get into the zone before you turn it on, so you can get your up bar there, and then you get in from there. So you can play around with that. Obviously, start time I have it set for our lovely 10 to 4 stop area, and then it just pretty much goes. You could change that. It's not set for anything specifically other than those defaults there. Audibles. Now with the strategy, it's always going to say Ninja's default is going to be I forget what order canceled, or not canceled, but well, whatever their default is for strategy. Regardless if it's a fill, stop, whatever it is, it's just going to say their default. So I have it coded in here so it actually does say targets and stops and auto trails, etc. and with the wave files and canceled orders. However, what doing that is if you have your audible in your control panel, if you have your audible settings in your control panel to continuous, you're going to get all of those sounds and you'll hear it, but most people probably don't, which means they're only going to hear the latest sound. And so you're probably not going to hear those unless you take off that default strategy default. And if you're interested in audibles, you can give me a call on that later. I don't want to get too involved in that. But if they're not sounding right, then if you don't hear targets and stops, then reach out to me and I'll let you know. So this radio repeat frequency is, again, similar to the ATM. It's the cha-ching, the auto trail, or whatever wave file you put in there, but it's the Ninja cha-ching. So every 10 ticks, it's going to cha-ching, cha-ching. If you want to hear it every 1 tick, then you just change it to 1. Synthetic data series. Now, again, because we're dealing with higher time frames in the background, I'm using these charts. I'm using the synthetic data. Now, it just so happens that I am using the 5-1 chart, and I'm saying to get my data from a 5-1 chart, so it's kind of redundant. I technically don't need that. But if you wanted to use a minute chart, but it would take the data from a 5-1 chart. So these settings are based on a 5-1 chart. So you don't necessarily have to be on that chart, but you would have to click synthetic data series. So that's why I have that set. So in case you're going in on an 8-2 chart or something, it's going to trigger off of 5-1 unless you change that. And those are your values. And then this is the standard Ninja normal stuff. Yeah, this is all Ninja. Okay, so that's the settings. So so getting back here, let me just turn it down here a smidgen here. So I'm in the manual mode, so nothing's going to happen automatically. So I'm going to turn it. It always goes on pause from the start. So now if I click it here, it's just going to go on an up bar, and you can see my entry trigger right there. Let me just pause it here. So there's my entry trigger. So as I say, I'm coming down, 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 and I'm waiting to go long as soon as I get the up bar. And as soon as I do get that up bar, then frankly, I forgot what our entries were. I think I saw 8 in there. It's a positive 8, if I'm not mistaken. Group A. Yeah, it's a positive 8. So 6 ticks back from the prior bar. We can count that. The prior bar is right there, and 6 ticks back is our trigger. So from that point, it's going to do an offset of a positive 8, which means it's going to put it right here. So we'll let that go. Try to make this a little faster for the video. It's just going to chase it down. See, it's going to go down until I turn it off. Okay, so there it is. So now you see I have a positive 8 from the entry trigger. So everything goes from this entry trigger. So if I measure from the entry trigger to the target, it's 32 ticks. And if I measure from the entry trigger to here, it's going to be 14 ticks. Whatever. Let's not get. Oh, there you go now. So it's going to get 14 ticks. And then the break even, which you obviously don't see yet, or the move to break even, or the auto trail you don't see yet, but it's the same premise. Everything from this entry trigger. Okay, so that's that one. So now let's just go and get out of that. Okay, well, so here's just so you know, because I manually changed that. It's set to automatically kill the strategy, and it's set by design on that for naked order purposes. So so moving forward again, so unpause it again, and in this case, it's the same kind of thing. I'll go on a down bar. So there's my down bar. I just happen to be on it at the same time. So I was there. So it measures from here, the prior bar, to there, which is 6 ticks is my trigger, and from there it goes to there and sets up my order, which is a negative or an 8. So I needed a positive 8 because I'm going further down. However, in this case, in 15 ticks, it should cancel. So it's sitting there, pending. There, it canceled out because it just got too far away from me. So again, down bar, and there's my down bar again. And here it is again. And now I'm actually in. So now one of two things are going to happen: my stop or my target. So that's really about it. That's the manual mode. Okay, so let me get out of here. And you just turn those on based on what you feel is necessary. If you don't want any background colors, you can make those all transparent, so you don't need to have them. If you want to use some other, I know one individual uses some other charting, so you could, if you don't want to see the background colors, just make them transparent, and then you can put your indicator on. for whatever that is. Okay, so let me stop that for a minute. Okay, so now let's go switch to the automatic mode. So now again, it defaults to pause because a couple times in the past I've turned it to automatic mode and boom, I'm in a trade. So I've said, oh, it's got to be paused. So now you're cruising along doing your thing and you say automatic. And so you activate it and now it's active. So now basically this is still new, we're still tweaking in it. This is the beta portion of it. We're still eliminating some zones that don't apply, and that's where I was saying is that there is going to be, I'm finding these are pretty powerful. I might incorporate these SR lines. You could download those support and resistance lines off the tools page, go to the web page and then go to tools. But you can see this is pretty powerful. So I'm thinking is I don't really want to take a long there going into those because they fail a lot. And I've seen it over and over again. So I'd rather wait until it breaks before I do that. So I'm still playing with that, and we're not there yet, but that's where it's at. And then the same thing with highs and lows of the day, or VWAP for that matter. I might not. I guess the reason why we're not seeing anything is behind.
Order submitted. Order canceled.
Okay, let's see this. Anyway, so I'm just looking at these VWAPs. So I might, get rid of these zones near VWAP. I want room to target. So here's a trigger that's set up, but it obviously canceled itself because it no longer qualified. So I'm just going to get one here automatically. I guess I can go a little faster.
Bearish moving average cross.
And there's the moving average.
Moving average cross.
I guess when you're going this fast, it gets annoying. I probably should have turned it off, but
bullish moving
it is what it is. So I'm waiting for this to trigger. Let me do this for some reason. All right, so let's see if I can pause it fast enough. And again, that spread of a minimum of 5 keeps you away from this right here. I don't know if you see it fast enough. There's one that, see now there's one that took, and I saw it quickly for a flash. I saw the entry trigger, but it pulled away from me and never took the order, and so therefore it canceled itself out, and then it disappeared. If it actually tripped, it would be there. So we're just trying to find one, and then I'll stop it. See, it's got to pull back into the area there. Okay, so stop. Okay, so you notice right here the way we have these set, at least with their settings, it hasn't pulled back. So even though they're valid, it just doesn't. It requires it to be pulled back into the area to trip automatically. Now that one should have tripped. However, I don't know what the length is. It should have, if my numbers are right, it should have taken that one. So I'll look into that. But in any event, these missed because it just never pulled back far enough, and we need to have that pullback. So now we're going down because things turned red, and so now it's going to plot. When it sees a red zone, it's going to go short. When it sees a blue zone, it's going to go long. Pretty self-explanatory. Again, it got into it, the trigger, and it placed our stop, and so now placed everything where we want to go. Now, unlike the ATM, whereas if you kill your target, you have to move it. But if you kill it, then you kill both of these because they're synced together as an OCO order. However, this is a strategy, so they're independent. So if this is running down and it's moving fast and you got some, super strong market and maybe news or whatever the heck came out, it's crazy, you can just kill it. You can just kill it, and as long as you have your auto trail checked and with some numbers in there, and your break even, move to break even, your stop will trail it. And that's what I say. The stop is or the trailing stop is my target. So basically, so you could just, now I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't kill your stop because then you'd have a little problem. You have to do some things manually. But you just heard it go cha-ching there for a second. So there's my entry trigger, but it got too far away and stopped. If it would have turned around, it would have popped me in. I needed that reversal bar in order to get in, because remember, see, I need the, right there, cancel. So there it did. So right now in this version, it's disappearing. It's supposed to stay there when the order takes. Right now, they're disappearing altogether. So that's a little fix that we're coming out with. So that'll be out probably today. So you can see what happened is it came into the zone. It was this one here. This one probably just got too far away. I have it set now. I don't know if we talked about that too much, but under here, under trade management, invalid setups and ticks. This is for the automatic mode. The 20 ticks. So basically, you got your zone here, and if you get 20 ticks away from it, it's going to invalidate itself, and it's no longer going to be valid. Now, 20 ticks, I had to start somewhere. I'm not sure what the lucky number is going to be, but in any event, it's 20 ticks right now. So in this case, it took it on this one. For whatever, it never pulled back. It has to pull back to get in there, and it didn't. So, but this one it did. So it came in here. It's set up with your entry trigger, which was there. Now it's disappearing, but it's not supposed to. So your entry trigger is right there. From 6 ticks. We'll go through this one more time, and then it'll be done. 6 ticks from the. It'd be nice if it stayed here. From the prior bar. So there's your entry trigger. And from that point forward, your numbers started coming together. And remember, we had here an offset of a positive 8. So that's why our entry is there. And our target, I think, did I move this one? No, I didn't. 32. So there's our 32 target. So when you're saying if you want to take 20 ticks, you have to say it's 20 ticks from the moving average. Oh, I'm sorry, from the entry trigger, because everything is 20. So if you say 20 ticks from the entry trigger, however, you have 8 ticks of positive offset, well, then your target is going to go at 20 ticks right there. However, you got in here, so that's only going to be 12 ticks of profit. So you have to calculate from the entry trigger. If you want 20 ticks, you have to take 20 ticks plus the 8 ticks that you have there for your offset, or subtract it if you're going backwards. But regardless, in this case, we have a positive offset of 8. So your entry trigger is there. But you want 20 ticks from your entry. You want a true 20 ticks. So you want to come to here. So that should tell you that you're going to need a total of, what's the lucky number? 28 ticks. You need to have 28 ticks set up in your settings to accommodate this 8 tick offset, a positive offset. Now, if it were a negative offset, then obviously you would subtract it. So you would need 20 ticks from the entry trigger less the negative offset that you're taking for with your offsets. And if you have a 0 offset and just get it in market order, then you're going to have a tick or two of slippage. That's normal. But for the most part, you can count accurately. 20 ticks from the entry trigger is going to be your entry. The entry trigger will be your entry minus, I've noticed, probably depends on the market, but typically about 1 or 2 ticks of slippage, or just because it's a market order, so you're going to have to pay for that. So if you want a true 20 ticks, you might want to make it 22. So in any event, that's kind of how that all works. You got the idea. So I think I'm done here with this, and I'll just keep this video as short as possible. I see I'm over 30 minutes already. I just can't seem to get 10-minute videos. So anyway, it is what it is. All right. So talk to you later.